been chasing all these dreams, I'm getting very close. Your work shouldn't feel like work if you really love it. If you set and you know your worth, then think if it's worth it. But I do count my blessings first, so you know I'm grateful every night. But watch me, baby, I'ma take it there. Tell ya I'ma stay the path. Tell ya I've been chasing all these dreams, I'm getting very close. Here we go. Your work shouldn't feel like work if you really love it. If you set and you know your worth, then think if it's worth it. But I do count my blessings first, so you know I'm grateful every night.
All right, welcome to the Mind Growth Mission podcast. Today I have a special guest. It's a close friend of mine. He's a brother, husband, father, and just somebody I truly respect and appreciate for being here today. Somebody that took the time out of his busy day. But he has one of these unique stories that I think shows that you can chase that happiness for the right reasons and switch your whole life around. Switch that game plan up, and it's for the better for your family. And this is a story of inspiration in my eyes, and somebody that's on a journey himself right now. So I wanted to get him on, share that, and just thank him for everything he's done for me and the people around him in his life, and go into some of that change he made for himself. But this is Aaron Kauffman. What's up, brother?
How you doing, man? Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I wanted to give you that introduction because you deserve it, man. And we spoke a little bit before we got on here about it and what I respect about you, but this man changed career paths. He has a PT degree, a doctorate at Duke University. He went to undergrad with me at UNC Charlotte. But tell me more about that, man. Your early days. You were a athlete as well growing up. And where'd you grow up? What were you doing? And how'd you end up at UNC Charlotte?
Yeah. So my story is kind of from all over. But, I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I would say, I've played sports my entire life. Started playing soccer when I was about 3 years old, and that was my life. Would travel all up and down the East Coast, and really at some point, soccer turned into running track and cross country. And it wasn't until about high school when I first started running track and cross country, and I probably wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't for soccer. Right. But I kind of saw a little bit more of a, I'm not gonna say career path, but a little bit more of a path to playing collegiate sports with cross country than I was with soccer. I mean, it's difficult.
You didn't think you could make it in soccer, bud?
I feel like I could have made it in soccer, but it was more the surrounding support system that you need a lot of, not just from like a team perspective, but also to elevate yourself individually in the soccer world. And with cross country and track, like it was me. It was my times. It was my time that I put in dedicating. I saw my direct results from, rather than my team was good enough. Then we got to play in, the state cup, and then that's when recruiters came to you and saw that. So our team was good, but I saw a better direction with cross country and track. And so, I had a pretty lucrative high school career. By the end of it, all that was said and done, I had won indoor states in the 100. I had run the 7th fastest time in the country. And that's kind of what led me to UNC Charlotte. Wow. A good friend of mine, who's still a good friend of mine today, recruited me to UNC Charlotte. He was an assistant coach at the time. I'll give a shout out to Ed Schlichter if he sees this. I don't know if you remember him or not, but Ed recruited me to come to Charlotte, and I was going through the whole recruiting process. I had bigger dreams of wanting to go to, Duke or UVA or Oregon, and going into my senior year, I didn't have the times for it, and so the coaches said, we're not looking for guys like you. And I really wanted to commit to a school and kind of have that chapter close where I knew like the next process, and that's kind of how UNC Charlotte and I ended up talking and ended up committing to them. After I committed to them, that's when I started running all those fast times and getting that national recognition And then those schools started coming back to me and saying, "Hey, are you still interested?" And that's when, I kind of believe in a commitment, and I committed to Charlotte, and I wanted to see it through, and so that's kind of my story of how I ended up at Charlotte.
Okay, that's awesome, man.
So, and then that's I guess kind of where you and I met is at Charlotte, and so,
Yep.
yeah.
I think the athlete community was big there as far as friendships go, and like the surrounding yourself with those types of people and competitive minded people from that front. And then obviously we got into other fun stuff in your off season, like volleyball we talked about. And just you had some characters you were with too as far as the sport goes.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the runner type of athletes are like high energy people in the whole, and there's a lot of characters involved with that and unique personalities, I'd say. So we did have some interesting people there. But Charlotte was a very good athletic school as well. Known for athletics. It was kind of under the radar nationally. But as far as like track and field and maybe even cross country, or I know like golf, soccer, other sports, they did really well and continue to do so. But tell me, I mean, for those that are listening, when you were talking about the record times or whatever, is that in cross country?
That was on the track. That was on the 800.
What? 800?
The 800.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And with that sport and with being able to do that, what kind of challenges were you tested and faced with? What pushed you? Do you think maybe sticking to your commitments and having that pressure off and like, okay, let's just go. I got somebody who's in my corner, and that's kind of propelling me to just push it to my own limits. Now I don't have to worry about all the other noise.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why you were hitting your national record-breaking times and all that.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to kind of take it back through the high school days and the evolution through my track career in the high school days is, with cross country in high school, you run a 5K. And I, could run a 5K pretty successfully, but it wasn't until really my junior year where I kind of started seeing real success on the track. And also the coaches, and you'll talk about challenges, the coaches that were on my team probably had different philosophies than I had or was like developing with like a running community. And so, I feel like I didn't run a 400 or 800 until my junior year of high school. Once I finally did, I really started to they saw that, hey, there's actually a lot of potential for Aaron right here. And I take a lot of that back to the soccer days, because if you see really good 800, 400, even some milers, most of them actually probably played soccer at some point in their career. And a lot of it's just sprinting, changing direction. You run can be anywhere between 5 and 10 miles in a soccer game, depending on the level that you play. And so, I kind of started taking it in my own hands, doing some training with some other friends that were with other schools. And, really what happened is the season goes in the fall, you have cross country, and then the spring is track. My senior year of cross country, I was running well. I ran a 15:45 for a 5K, which was, one of the faster times in the state at that point. And we finally got to the state meet, and I was, probably expected to take top 10 going in. And I, for lack of the better words, crapped the bed. I mean, I think I took 60th. And I'll look back on that, and I remember a point in the race, it was probably about a 2 mile, and it was at the point where I just felt like, when the time was going to get tough, I just gave up. I feel like in that race I gave up. Cross country didn't end the way it was supposed to, and then going through the whole recruiting process like we talked about with UNC Charlotte, and I made that commitment, but also yes, it probably took some pressure off of me, but then at that point I was like, I'm a little more determined to finish off a career in high school that at least had expectations of myself, and actually ended up blowing those expectations away. I didn't think anything on a national level. I wanted to make it to states in track and perform well, but ended up winning indoor states, and then took fourth in outdoor states, and then ran a national race later in the year that ended up having a really fast time.
That's awesome.
So yeah. So, and those are kind of some, you look back at some of the things that shape you, and I will look back at those times, and it's like, I know I gave up, and it's just interesting because you talk about how do you react to it, and those types of things about how you react to it. I didn't realize at the time. Probably nowadays I realize it a little bit more. But controlling the things that you can control, you start controlling those things. I can't control how other people race on those days. I can control what I do in my preparation and things like that. And so that's probably the initial journey to figuring out a lot of those things.
It sounds like you were trying to stay away from that feeling of like letting yourself down, right? You wanted to stay away from that, and just kind of propelled you forward. And that's a big testament of people that I think are really successful. They fall down 5 times, get up 6, or whatever the saying is, right? Like every time they get back up, they're stronger for it. They learn from it. They use it as fuel, as energy. I was actually watching some of Steph Curry's documentary earlier, Underrated, on Apple TV Plus, but it's called Underrated because everybody counted him out. He ended up at Davidson, which Charlotte played every year, right in our backyard.
We'd go to the games that he was playing in.
Yeah, it goes to show that hard work, even when people are counting you out, it's just, what are you doing for yourself to get better? How are you pushing your limits? And that's what he did. And in the off season, he made his corrections, right? Yeah. And to this day, that's why he's on the scale he's on, and probably one of the best players of all time, if not up there, top 3, top 5, in my opinion. Just the way he impacts the team and how they feel that. And same with you, man. The energy I feel when I'm around you, it's like, this guy's easy to get along with. He's somebody that is passionate about what he does, but more so about people and the care you have for others and all that. And that feeds into different energies that you give off. And it helps others be better acquainted with what they want to do or what they want to have as an experience with you. And I think that's really important skill to have, is to make somebody really comfortable. And you do that. A lot of people seem to kind of get out of that care and feeling for others. So we'll get to the career change and how that probably helps you too, knowing that you are that type of way. But I just want to go into UNC Charlotte. You're an athlete, so we'll take it from the segment of your college career. What's going on at that point? Because now we're at a different level of skill and talent, and what happens during your years there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a couple different directions we can go within that right there, because I think it all kind of comes together at that point where, I do believe like sports and sports in college kind of shaped a lot of my I don't say habits, but a lot of in track, like you were talking about having challenges to overcome earlier. There are days I did not want to go run.
Of course.
It's 95.
Who wants to go running?
It's 95 degrees out right now. Yeah. Like, do you think I want to? No, I'd rather go play volleyball.
Yeah, for sure.
And be social and interact, but it kind of teaches you. You set lofty goals for yourself, and you have to understand the work and determination it takes. Because you mentioned Steph. Steph's not Steph is very talented, but Steph's work ethic is second to none. And I think that's something that sports teaches you, is work ethic. And that's something sports helps with, but also I do think that like work ethic just can't be taught per se.
Right.
I think that's where you look at a lot of successful people. Work ethic is like one of the big underlying things that, I wouldn't necessarily, I guess you can call it a trait, but it's one of the things that a lot of those people have in common, and it's something that's not really taught. But I think it's through experiences that shape you that is how you learn, I guess, work ethic. And so kind of going back to the college aspect of it, being in sports in college teaches you to be disciplined. You have your goals, but I mean, for me, I didn't have the typical college experience. Our season was cross country in the fall. We had 2 weeks off, which we had our fun in our 2 weeks off. And then we went straight into the indoor season. And, I'd go back to Pennsylvania and run, 11 miles in sleet on Christmas Eve. Wow. Because I knew that's kind of what it would take for me to, reach my goals. And also to be, the expectation of that I'm putting my work in for our team as well, too.
Yeah.
And then from there, we wouldn't have any time. We'd go straight in the outdoor season. And we'd be in the outdoor season till after school even ended. And then maybe a week or two off, and then it's into summer training. So it's kind of a work ethic that it just like teaches you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I say teaches, and also it can't be learned. But that kind of shapes who you are. And so that was part of how college helped shape the direction of where I ended, and kind of some of the traits that are instilled in me right now. But then also going the direction of like the career change a little bit. So you said that I was a physical therapist. From probably my sophomore year of high school, I knew I always wanted to be a physical therapist.
Oh, wow.
Like
the way back to sophomore year of high school.
High school. Like that was my direction. I
Wow.
knew I wanted to do that.
So what was the degree you had at Charlotte?
Kinesiology.
Okay.
So I came in and knew exactly what I wanted to do, which was weird for the guidance counselors, because they're like, oh, you should try this or you should try this. I'm like, no, I know I want to be a physical therapist. These are the classes I know I need to take to do that. That's maybe some of the dedication. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't hear that too often from college students, knowing exactly what they want, especially for that long.
Yeah.
It's like, I know me, I started with the biology. I was like, sure, biology, just pick something. And I was like, all right, I heard enough stories. I'm going to switch it out. You know, it's like, no. But it was one of those on the fly for me. So what do you think it was that like brought your attention to it early on? Because I'm always curious about how people just follow that path early on at that age when you already know that's what you want to be involved with. How did that spring up? Is it just because athletics has been such a big part of your life and you already were connected maybe with some physical therapists? Or
a little bit of that, a little bit of mentorship and people that I looked up to. Went down the road of physical therapy. And I had a mentor in high school, and he was a senior when I was a freshman. He graduated. He went down the road of physical therapy, which is why I looked into it. And coming back to sports and the body and also a good career, that's where I looked at that and I said, hey, all of that makes sense, and all that is me. That's what I want to do. I would come out with a good degree, a good paying job. I get to work with athletes. I get to do like what I would want to do. Because I knew,
it sounds like a job everybody would love to have, right?
Yeah.
Especially before you get involved with it like intensely.
Yeah.
It's like, on paper, how it seems, it could be great career path and take you places, and it can do all that.
Yeah.
But then life hits you a certain way, and you're like, the happiness factor, that's key, and we'll get to that. But going to UNC Charlotte, kinesiology, I have a lot of friends that went through that program, or exercise science, what have you, and fell in love with it. Now are doing successful careers on that, and obviously you had a successful career too, and we'll get to that. But as an athlete, what I'm hearing though is the mental challenges and the mental breakdowns that you were able to overcome. I think that's the piece that a lot of people get stuck and really change their trajectory, right? As a college athlete, you're expected to do more, I remember athletes I live with were doing 2-a-days often, and you were working one season after another. So there's not a lot of rest period. There's not a lot of time off. There's not a lot of mental time to yourself. So how were you able to check in and be okay mentally? That's where I'm like, holy crap, like how do you do all this? Like, did it just come natural, or there stuff you had to really work on, or was it just that challenging as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because, you're talking at 18, 20 years old, trying to understand mental health versus, 30 some year old now, right? And so to that aspect, I probably didn't think of it much. I tried to use motivating quotes that kept me, focused on my goals, and still do that today. It's more probably reading books in that sense than actual like one-liner quotes. But that was probably one big thing back then is using quotes to motivate myself to overcome a lot of those challenges, because there were even challenges just through Charlotte. Like, I came in a highly touted recruit. My first 2 to 3 years did not run well. I didn't run a faster time than I did in high school, and so that's challenging. That's mentally exhausting. I'm not sure if you knew this. After my freshman year, I was thinking about transferring. I was
Just to get a fresh start, like what?
Yeah, fresh start. I wasn't running well. I thought I had a better situation potentially for me, and then, but yeah, I talked about commitment earlier, and so I stuck it out. I said, I'm going to do everything this coach tells me to do, and run myself to the wall, and if it doesn't work, well, then I know I did everything I should have done or could have done.
Right.
Ended up, coach ended up leaving, another coach came in, and I mean, really different philosophy, and from there I ran a lot better. I mean, we started doing weight training a little bit more, different types of speed workouts, and it did a lot better for me. So I ended up having a good career at Charlotte in the end, but the way I got there wasn't probably how I wanted to get there. So yeah.
Yeah, it was another one of those kind of cycles too. I think we all live in like cycles, patterns, things that happen to us, for us, what have you too. So you kind of had that go on in high school, funny enough, and then the success happens, and then college kind of unfolded the way it was meant to be overall, but like there were challenges there early and not leading to the right expectations you wanted for yourself, but then it always kind of works itself out. Like if you are determined enough, dedicated enough, and really stick to your commitments to yourself, like that in the long term tends to work out, whether it's like a couple weeks span where you're going through like a cycle like that, or a couple years, right? Like it tends to work out if you're doing the right things or correcting those things. And it sounds like you made that shift when you had to, right? And you're really kind of realizing, maybe going in your head a little bit, but it sounded like you had distractions, or kept yourself distracted enough to not worry about the mental aspect as much. And I think that can be helpful when you're in college. You know, less downtime, more like I got to be productive. I got to have fun when I have the opportunities to have fun, and I got to do my school. I got to do my athletic stuff. So like it keeps you busy enough to really not think about that. So that's a good point too. But then you end with a successful career in athletics, and I'm sure you're doing well in school. So take me down like the last year, last months, and what kind of road you were on from there, because with cross country and track, unless you're an Olympian, you're really not making a career out of that. That's just a dedicated passion sport altogether, right? It's that adrenaline rush that you love, right? But then tell me what kind of unfolds there and what's going through your head.
Yeah, so I ended up taking a fifth year. That had the eligibility for a fifth year, and so kind of going that last year, I told you I knew I wanted to be a physical therapist. I knew I wasn't going to be an Olympian, at least with the times I was running at that point. I was close. But at that point, the times that I was running, I knew that part, that chapter was going to come to an end, and I was going to fulfill my career, my dream of being a physical therapist. So I was doing everything necessary to kind of get all those ducks in a row, and applying to PT school. Applied to a couple of PT schools, Duke, Southern Cal, and those are two that I was accepted to. And from there, that was a tough decision because at the time, Duke, I'm a huge Duke fan. I grew up a huge Duke fan.
Fair enough, same, bro.
Dream school.
Coach K.
Yeah, exactly. And you talk about motivational people. And then also USC was the top PT school in the country as well, too.
Takes you to the other side of the country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so those were, tough decisions at that point. But kind of leading up to it, I ended up ultimately choosing Duke. And so you talk about kind of the chapters of everything as well, too. And I remember when I was done at UNC Charlotte, graduated, still had a couple meets after that. We had nationals and going all the way up into the time I was finally eliminated.
And are you representing the school still at that time, even though you graduated?
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Right.
still wearing my Charlotte uniform.
Yeah.
And at that point, I knew I was going to go to Duke the next year, and I remember that summer in between, like I felt lost.
Wow.
Because track running, like that was all I've ever known, and
Consumed you.
Yeah, it defined. I feel like it defined me.
Yeah,
and,
it was you. Yeah, exactly. Your identity.
Yeah, I knew I needed to go out for a run. Well, I didn't need to go out for a run anymore. So what do I do? And so that summer was actually a little bit difficult, just because I felt like I was trying to find myself, even though I knew I had like my next steps too.
And how old are you at this point? 22, 23?
22. Yeah, like 22 or 23. 22. And, then at that point, make the transition to Duke. And, it's med school. I mean, we're in the cadaver lab, 2.5 days. We're, studying until 8 o'clock at night. I remember I used to go in the library and I don't think I touched the library at Charlotte. We, as athletes, we had our own study hall.
Yeah, of course.
But, I'd be in the library writing out all my notes on the whiteboards, and it was a different type of, dedication at that point, at least to my schoolwork.
And with Duke, it was probably a cultural thing academically to be in there and putting that extra work in that you're not used to. Just a cultural thing with Duke, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Known as one of the best academic schools.
It was, PT school is competitive. In general.
Yeah.
And then, so you have all these type A personalities that all were the top of their class, and then they all get into one class, and now they're all have that mentality of still trying to be the top of the class. I'm trying to outwork you. I'm trying to outwork him. Like, you still have this little competitiveness. and that wore off after probably the first semester, at least for me. Maybe some people it didn't. But
you saw people starting to try to work together as opposed to more combative, maybe, or competitive.
Yeah. So
maybe everybody realized, hey, we're all kind of in the same boat trying to figure this thing out. And
there's that aspect. And then also for PT school at Duke, we utilized a curriculum called team-based learning. And so they put us in teams from day one. I had a team of 6 people, or I was one of 6. We had 12 different teams, and we did everything as a team. We took a test individually, which we individually needed to pass. Then we retook that exact same test as a team and needed to collectively come up with an answer. Which, there's a lot of research out there in terms of team-based learning achieves a lot more retention, a lot more like actual learning. And then also you work with people. Right?
Yeah.
Which in the world of PT you have to do.
Of course.
So there was that aspect of it all too. So and for the 2 years that we were on campus, everything, every test, took individually and then took with the team. And
Interesting.
it's interesting that 6 people trying to come up with one answer.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
You gotta learn what people are really good at, what they're really knowledgeable at,
right,
where they excel at, and then use that to formulate one thing.
One answer.
Yeah.
Right. And so that can be very difficult because people can be very opinionated on if they think they're right or not, or why they think they're right, and then you have to work with them to, again, collectively come up with that one answer. Because I might be very passionate, like, I know I read this right here. And you might be like, no, I read this right here.
Yeah.
And we probably read the same thing, might have understood it differently, but,
Of course.
Who's right? It doesn't matter. You have to come up with an answer collectively together. So,
Wow. Teaches you a lot in those moments, for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. And PT school is 2 years long or 3 or?
3 years long, 2 years academic, 1 year clinical.
Okay.
So we were on campus for 2 years, and it was awesome. Got to sit front row for all the Duke games for 2 years.
You were Kauffman crazy, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, and
Nice.
part of the big reason of choosing Duke as well too. Be Kauffman crazy.
That's awesome.
And then our third year was all clinical, and I chose to go to Pebble Beach, California, and then I went to Portland, Oregon for 6 months. So
Wow.
going back to choosing between Duke and USC, since I chose Duke, I knew I wanted to try to take all my clinical rotations on the West Coast to see the country, get to experience that aspect of it too.
Yeah, that's funny because if you went to USC, then maybe you would have still ended up at the same places, right?
Right.
Pebble Beach and the
Yeah.
Portland, like maybe you still would have. So it like all kind of worked out, meant to be, I would think, right?
Yeah.
And then what did you learn when you went over there to do your clinicals? Is that when it's like, okay, this is real now, I can see more into it, and what are you thinking? Are you still as like passionate and into it as ever? Like, are you all in at this point still?
Yeah, absolutely all in. I knew I wanted the Pebble Beach clinic was a sports and ortho clinic. We had to have one ortho clinic, one inpatient clinic, and then one was kind of our choosing, which I tried to choose another outpatient, which is more of what you think of. I'm not gonna say traditional physical therapy because it's such a spectrum, but you have shoulder surgery, then you go to physical therapy. That's a type of physical therapy I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I knew the Pebble Beach clinic was a sports and ortho. It's golf heaven, and
sure.
I'm a big golfer as well too. So
Yes, sir.
so I knew at that point, loved all of that. Went to Portland, did an inpatient, and then also my second rotation in Portland was an outpatient. So I get done with school, and I knew exactly what I knew when I was in 10th grade. I wanted to be a physical therapist, work with athletes and injuries, and help return to sport. And, there's some side story to it. I went through a bad breakup as well, too, in that last year. And so at that point, whenever I was done with physical therapy school, I was a little bit lost in determining where in the country I wanted to go with that. But I still knew I wanted to do, or what I wanted to do with PT. And so actually went back home for the summer, was studying for boards, and I was trying to decide between Portland, which I was just at, which was a pretty cool city for a 25-year-old at the time. Austin, Texas, full of young people, and Charlotte, which was and is continuing to going to be a growing city. And so I ended up coming to Charlotte one weekend to visit some friends and ended up signing a lease because I knew the area. I'm connected with people here, the city, and so that's kind of how my PT journey started. After school was back here in Charlotte. So,
but you were back in Pennsylvania when you decided this, or?
Yeah. So the way it worked out, graduated from Duke in May, and then we couldn't take the boards until July.
Okay.
And so we had a little bit of time period that I technically could have worked, but I didn't have my license yet. So I couldn't I couldn't be like I'd have to be working under someone else, and so I took the time to study. I didn't want to try to work at a clinic as a tech because I knew I didn't want to be in Pennsylvania. So I didn't want to, for lack of a better word, get involved in a clinic and then like get stuck there.
Yeah.
So to then move down to Charlotte, finish my studying, took the boards, and actually ended up working for a company that I interned with in undergrad. So
wow.
and that's how I kind of started my PT career at
Wow.
that point. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's important. The connections you made along the way, it comes full circle. And it's those relationships with others and not burning bridges and actually emphasizing the relationship and its importance and, and keeping in touch with people. I think that's super important because people that impacted you in different ways, you never know how it'll come back around later for them or for yourself either. Even with this right here, I think we ran into each other at a big golf championship or something, and then we reconnected, and I was like, let's get up, and then next thing you know, I'm using you as my financial guy, and
you're giving some away here.
Yeah, no, I am, but still, it's just funny how it comes full circle, man, because there's people right there that are alongside you along your journey, and you might think your trajectory is one way, but then again, you might have the best connection with this person you didn't have the opportunity to make that connection with before, and now you do, and things change in life, so that ability to adapt and change, that's important, and you're a true testament of all that. You've had to adapt in several scenarios and changes in your life, and from playing a sport to not to being an academic competitive person, right? And really figuring it out and going to different places in the country even to figure it out and start fresh and challenge yourself that way and get out of your comfort zone. So you've done it all. So now we're at the point where you're in PT, doing it officially now in Charlotte.
Probably 2014 or so.
Yeah, so we're at 2014, and what is it like now that you've, I don't know if you want to say reach your goal, but I guess it is reaching your goal at some point because you've always dreamed of doing this job. So what's it like, and how to treat you, and what were the pros, the cons, and what led you into your next endeavor?
Yeah. So I went back to this company that I did an undergrad internship with. Actually, you talk about relationships. I interned with a guy that was with his company. When I finished PT school, he was no longer with that company. And so I went to him and said, hey, I'm done with PT school. I'd love to work with you. And he says, I don't have a position. He said, but go back to the company that I was with, and they might have something for you. So I went back to that company, worked with them for about 2.5 years. And, it's interesting. I used to always think that, once you started your career for like the rest of your life, that was just like the stage of life that you're in. and it is not, because we've talked about how many different stages so far.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gone from, high school and within high school and college and PT school. I mean, those are just 3 different stages right there. I used to think whenever you started, like, all right, that's your career till you're 65, you retire. That's like your next stage of life. And so now I'm starting off on that right there. And as a PT, you're trying to, develop a caseload, and I was in private practice. And so you're trying to connect with doctors, and you realize you go through school and there's a lot of stuff you don't know. So you're trying to figure it out along the way. And so I start, and
I love that you say that since you got a Duke grad degree and you're able to still say that, because I think we're all just trying to figure it out, evolve, and take things as they come and interpret it our own way, and then use that to get us to the next thing, right? We're always changing and learning and growing, and that's where people kind of get caught up. They think it's supposed to be one way. Well, no, that one way can always have a chance to change, which
Yeah.
is not a negative. It just we're all trying to figure it out. Even the most successful people I've met, they're still trying to figure out things in life or working on certain aspects of their life. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you. And change isn't a bad thing. I think there's one constant in life, and that is change.
Yeah.
That's one. There's one of those small one-liners that I used to
to
look
so
at.
True.
But yeah, and then as I worked for them for about 2.5 years, I know I was passionate about golf. I got a golf certification and was trying to really grow a business within the golf community. And but it still just wasn't, at that clinic, wasn't quite accomplishing everything I wanted to do. And so, I made a decision, reached out to the company that I saw as they were doing the stuff that I wanted to be doing. You mentioned Steph. They've done rehab with Steph. I mean, it was they treat very high-level athletes, professional, college. We've seen, everybody from under the sun at that point, and I was like, I want to do that. That's what I've been wanting to do. And so, made the jump with them and started working with them. And at that point, I feel like that's really when my PT career started, because I was working with that was my dream job in PT. That's exactly what I wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
I would work with everyone from Kemba Walker to Gerald Henderson to college athletes to high school athletes that have actually turned into professional athletes now. And so that's like everything I wanted to be doing. And then talking about change, and I was growing within the company, and also talking about different stages of life. I got to the point that my wife, well, at this point I have a wife, but my wife and I were expecting our first child. And the time that I was putting into what I was doing to help grow the business, I probably realized I wasn't going to be able to do that. Maybe not wasn't going to be able to do that, but I'm such a giving person. You talk about my why, and I think you had mentioned it, that I love helping people. I love connecting with people, and that's a lot of that's PT in a nutshell for you right there.
For sure.
There's the treatment aspect of it too, but you're connecting with people, you're building trust with them, you are you're trying to figure out what's important to them or what the injury means to them. And so that is really when I kind of started looking at that, it wasn't necessarily the PT that was the fulfilling part of everything I did. And I'm somebody that's so giving that I was giving so much time. I mean, I was in the clinic at 6:30. I'd leave at 6:30. I'd go to high school football games just to be on the sidelines to watch, my athletes and network and things along that line. And so I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do that and still be able to be a successful father and family man. And so that leads to kind of the big part is the career change, right?
Yeah.
And that's where, now I have made a big transition in my life and career, and a very big risk challenge is made a change to being a financial advisor. And that's still scary. So not in a bad way, but I mean, you talk about dreams and everything you wanted to be, and now I talk about there's different stages of life, and that's the big important thing to me, is that I get to be there for my family. I get to be around, and I get to still have the principles and values of getting to help people and get to know them. And when I saw that is exactly what a financial advisor does, it kind of was it was a no-brainer when it came to a change.
Yeah.
So,
you kept your priorities in line, and then you added priorities.
yeah.
So the kids come and you're like, I'm a family guy, I'm a caring guy, I need to be there for for this person I'm bringing into the world, right? You want to
Yeah.
have the time to see them grow.
And my wife too. I'll give her a
Yeah,
plug.
of course, of course. I mean, of course. But no, man, that's one thing about like prioritization in life. Like life changes, so you just have to adapt with it. If you're not going to be in a position you feel like is required of you to be at your best, then you do have to make these hard choices and these changes that are going to help you best long term.
Yeah.
So that initial stage of learning something new and really trying to figure it out early on and really going through the grind and the battle of that and the mental aspect of it and that's time consumption just trying to figure it all out early on. So you realize that even if you are going to make this change, there's more challenges ahead before you get to a more comfortable place. And that's with anything, right? So tell me, I mean, that was a hard decision to make, but you just said it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think kind of come back to like the why behind everything.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And that's where, I know my purpose, my why is that I love to help people. I love to challenge them, to push them, and so I think when I really looked deep down at physical therapy and financial advising, and now financial advising kind of came up because it was an opportunity from family that was presented to me. So it wasn't just a whim that I was like, I'm not happy with PT. Let's try this. It was an opportunity that actually came about 5 years ago. The opportunity was presented to me, and I said, "Are you crazy? I'm treating these professional athletes like no." and then my son came, and that's when I really kind of thought about it again. But going back to that why is that when I really looked deep down into it, those principles of what I was doing as a physical therapist and what I would be doing as a financial advisor is really the same purpose. And so the application might be a little bit different, and that's like the learning curve, and that's always pushing yourself to grow and learn and learn new traits and not just in my career field but just in general, and your knowledge, but kind of always come back to that purpose of why.
Absolutely.
And that's where that decision didn't it was hard, but I know I'm doing it for the right reasons.
Absolutely. If you have the strong enough reasons, that propels you forward in whatever changes you make and whatever you have to do to get to where you want to be, I think. And I'm reading Start With Why right now by Simon Sinek.
I'm reading it too.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't bullshit me.
No.
Are you serious?
No, I'm dead serious.
That's hilarious. How amazing is that book?
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Now, it's funny because it is a redundant book, but it doesn't seem redundant when you're reading it because it's so strong and to like teach you how to use their why to build different aspects of relationships or business or what you're growing, what you're doing in life, what you're about, things like that, and how certain companies and individuals grow and when they get to a certain size, like how they can really change because they're no longer dictating and leading the way they once were. How do they trickle down what they're trying to bring? If they lose their why, then you see the business kind of go up in flames for a little bit maybe, and it's just so important and key to have those people around you that are about the same things you're about, right? To really push you even further and make things quote unquote easier for you. They might push you in a sense to make it harder in certain ways, but that's what you need, right? And then there's the reverse too. You see somebody that's very motivating and helpful and caring, like yourself, for instance, and you want to strive to be like that. It pushes you to be a better person. So surrounding yourself with the right people is very important. But having those strong reasons of why you're doing the things you want to do and keeping that in the forefront to push you during those tough times is the major key to all this and to what your story is about, honestly, because you chased your why for so long and it led you to one thing, and then now it's totally flipped the script into another thing to allow the freedom and the flexibility and the important things in your life to happen the way you want it to happen, the way you envision it, right?
Yeah.
It might not be how you envisioned it before, but it led you here,
Right.
you know. And it's just so awesome to be a part of that, because there's so many people that do feel stuck, like they do have to chase the thing they're already in.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, taking that leap of faith and betting on yourself is the way you're gonna see what you're capable of again.
Yeah.
Just like you did with sports and athletics, and going to different levels of that. You know, there were times where you were down, but you realized, like, hey, if I just change a couple things here, I'll get back up again.
Yeah.
And same thing here. You know you're capable of it, and it's just another way to test yourself in a positive way, and then to prove to those around you, like, hey, I know I can do this, and you can do it too. And that's why I do this as well, to get these stories out there. So tell me, man, now that you've been doing it for a few years now, or a couple of years now, what are some of the challenges with the career switches that a lot of people might need to hear before they do something like that? Do you think you planned well enough ahead, or do you think everything kind of hits you, like, and it keeps hitting you from different directions?
I'm definitely a planner.
Yeah.
So, in a decision like that, I mean, like you mentioned, I mean, it's a doctorate degree from Duke, and a decision like that to make a change is not an easy decision, and it's not something that doesn't go with a lot of thought either. I usually like to surround myself with a very good network, and honestly a big network too. From the standpoint is I talked about this change with a lot of people. I probably had 10 to 15 people that I sat down, had lunch, had coffee, had serious conversations about, because you're going to get different opinions from different people. I talked to patients about it, a couple of patients, some of my like long-term, like tried and true people, and some of them were like, Aaron, you're great at what you do. Why would you ever make a change? And it makes you think. And so I had some people in my corner, which I needed to say, Aaron, no, you should continue to do PT. And then I, gave all the reasons why I think I should do financial advising, or make this transition. And at the end of it, they agreed with me, because it wasn't just about like the PT aspect of it. So I think surrounding yourself with good people is always a important aspect of it, and getting your opinions out, getting your reasons out of why, and talking to different people about that, because like when I make a decision now, I talk to 4 or 5 different people before I actually make a decision on it. And so I'm not sure that goes exactly into some of your questions about some of the challenges, and was it everything you kind of expected it to be, but that's kind of how that was the initial challenge in that. So I planned for that a lot. And so I did my research on everything. Also, I told you this was a family. My father-in-law is a financial advisor, and so he has a vast network. I talked to a lot of them as well too, of what should I be expecting, what should I be doing, what's a good day look for you, what's a bad day look for you, how do you respond in those bad days, and so I knew a lot already in terms of what to expect at that point. So that was that made the transition a lot smoother as well too. Now that I'm in it and been in it for a couple years, there's stuff that gets thrown to you every other day. But I think it comes a lot back to processes, and surrounding yourself with good people, mentorship, having people, like I said, that you can talk to, and having a plan as well too of when things like that do come up. You have that plan and process, because probably something we haven't even really talked about, but like anxiety, and that deals with mental health and things along that line, which also can, I think part of the podcast here is to motivate people to actually challenge them to do, things that they've always wanted to do. And so, if people are afraid to, or haven't done that, or afraid to kind of step out of the box, you know, some of that can become because of anxiety,
Right.
of the fear of the change and the unknown and all of that.
Yeah.
And so I think whenever you have a plan and you have clarity within that plan, it makes all those challenges a lot easier, and you have a process for those challenges when they do come up. So.
Absolutely, man. I love your answer there, and I know a little bit of the behind the scenes with the things that you've been involved with. Put yourself out there more and get out of your comfort zone. And with any career where you're kind of working for yourself, you're self-employed. Really, you really have to challenge yourself to get creative and put yourself out there and figure it out. But no, I mean, those are all the right things. I think the right steps. You know, talk to people that have already done it. Mm-hmm. People that have been doing it for a while, people that are successful, no matter what level they're at of it, you can learn something from them. And that's one thing I take in my life very seriously, is every interaction, every person I encounter, there's something I can learn from them. There's something they're offering. There's something they bring to the table that will help me rise up or understand myself better. And obviously you getting out of your comfort zone with the career change. I mean, that's the ultimate, getting out of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
And really challenging yourself, seeing what you're capable of. So I love that, man. But, you know, I always ended up bonding with people that are athletes. But I think the mental athletes are just as important. I feel like people that have followed that path and pursuit of being doctors, being lawyers, and really sacrificing for the better good in life and for others, there's a lot of sacrifice there, and you've sacrificed a lot and continue to do so. So, you know, don't shy away from understanding that, knowing that there's a lot of good you've accomplished and done, and things that you've learned, skills that you've learned from PT, you'll be able to carry over to your new career. I talked about that with you before. It's like it didn't go away completely. It's still you. It's still your makeup.
Right.
You know, it's still what you're about, and that's another way you can create that relationship and bond with others and figure out other ways to help others, is what you've learned from that past life or the past thing you were doing, right? So it doesn't completely go away, and I think that's what some of the people that are making these changes or want to make the changes need to understand. It's like, leading up to this point, you've learned so much, and you are who you are for all these other reasons too. It's not what you're doing that makes you what you are. You know, it's all the other things, and a lot of the intangible stuff as well, that just inspires others or helps yourself and helps others. So I want to go there too. You mentioned the father-in-law. In financial advisor, kind of groomed you a little bit, probably mentored you a bit.
Mm-hmm. And still.
How long has he been doing it?
He's been doing it 31 years.
That's what I'm saying. So at the end of the day, when you have somebody that's been doing it that long, not only are they passionate about it, but they know some of the tricks and I'm not going to say shortcuts, but they know ways to help you make it easier for yourself. They have some tools that you'll need, right? And I think every industry I've been involved with has these characters or these people that have done it for 10, 15, 20 years, and you can learn so much. Even if they've done it 5 years, but are at almost a level of like mastery within what it is, like I'm going to take their word for it and try these things out. So what are some of the things that are getting you out of your comfort zone now that you think are challenges maybe now or coming up later that you might be presented with now that you're a little familiar and you got a little time under your belt with it?
Yeah.
What do you see now, and how do you want to help others from the financial world?
Yeah. You know, a lot of it comes to a mindset, because they're you know, I am building my own book of business.
Yeah.
You know, exactly. I am starting from scratch and building, and that's a hard thing to do and a scary thing to do too, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And so, you know, it's difficult sometimes putting yourself out there. It's difficult, you know, trying to have conversations with people about things that they don't want to have conversations with, and you know, it's a big mentality as well too, because you're going to deal with a lot of rejection. and I have dealt with a lot of rejection.
Yeah,
Which
it's
is
guaranteed.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's okay. You know, you have to have this mentality that you know, you're not going to be able to help everybody. Where you know, even though I want to help everybody, I'm not going to be able to help everybody, and that's okay. I mean, I get to, the beauty of it is I still get to help the people that I'm developing those relationships with, and so that's probably a big difficult part of it right now. You know, my company, they were built off of doing door knocking. And so they would knock on people's doors to introduce themselves. And that is very uncomfortable. I'm not sure if you've ever knocked on someone's door and tried to introduce yourself and start a conversation.
I did for life insurance, so I understand.
Yeah. So you know.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get.
You never know what you're going to get, and you have to go with a certain mentality with it too. And it's a very uncomfortable mentality because
this could be 10 seconds, this could be an hour.
Right.
Conversation, you know, but it's okay if they say no.
Yeah. And like I said, then you go back to the mentality, and in that sense, you kind of start the world of sales will tell you that you have a number, like, of how many no's, and someone told me early on, a no is one step closer to a yes.
Yeah.
Because
I love that quote. I use that quote too.
Yeah.
Respect. Yeah.
So you start figuring out how many times you need to talk to somebody until you finally determine until you get a yes. And so if someone says no, well, now you're closer to your yes. Mm-hmm. And so those are some of the things that are challenges. You know, and putting yourself out into, you know, big groups of people as well too. And so the nice thing about the company I work for is that they give me a lot of resources, and so I get to utilize those resources. Mm-hmm. That gives me more confidence to work with, you know, my clients. Yeah. But that's probably the more uncomfortable parts and aspects of my job now, where, you know, we, as a physical therapist, and I correlate the two a lot as well, but, you know, we would be reaching out to doctors and to coaches and athletic trainers, and so I would do that in some capacity. Or
building a book of business of some sort, kind of in the same regard.
Same regard.
You're using some of those skills and
Exactly.
tools and things that you learned from a previous life.
Right. You're exactly right. And so from that aspect, you know, it can be a little bit more, I feel like it's a little bit more challenging what I do now, because I was doing it every day. I was just in it and had 10 years of experience. And I remember the first time I did it as a PT and how uncomfortable it felt. Mm-hmm. You're just it's kind of bringing up all of those emotions again.
Emotion's a good word, because when you talk about people's money,
right,
emotions involved. A lot of people are very fearful or emotional when it comes to their money, their hard-earned dollar and everything else, which is 100%, right? But at the end of the day, you want somebody like you in their court helping them out through it, navigating through that, you know, and the trust building, the big relationship factor is huge in this. But it's where the toughest piece is. It's like the most fun piece, but it's the toughest piece at the same time. It's like, that's why you got to hear all these no's, but just be true to yourself and who you are, and the good will come out of it. Yeah. You know, and that's where it's very challenging with what you're doing. And that's one reason I wanted you here today too, is because I know how challenging the field is and how creative people have to get and how they have to evolve and move with the times and adapt, and that agility and everything is so key. So tell me about what the future looks like for you and what you want out of it, and where do you see yourself maybe in 5-10 years?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, right?
Well, you got a kid. You got your kid.
I got a kid. You know, we hope to, you know, you can plan for that as much as you want, but it's in other hands. But we hope to have another child at some point, and hopefully be done it too. One was hard.
I understand. Yeah.
So, you know, you talk about 5-10 years down the road, hope to have another, at least a brother for Forrest. I'm sorry, have Forrest be a bigger brother, to have another child. You know, right now, a lot of my focus is on building relationships. It is building my network in other regards that PT didn't take me to. It is building within my community as well too. I want to have a bigger community presence. I think that comes back to looking up to my dad. He was always involved in the community. Like, people back home always knew me, not because of running or anything, but because I was his son. So I always felt like I couldn't get in trouble because I couldn't do things that would get me in trouble because I always had eyes on me.
Wow, yeah.
So I want to have a community presence now. A small town outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Charlotte are two different communities. Charlotte's a lot bigger community, so I at least, again, want to have that presence in the community. I hope to continue to be building the relationship and the foundations that my wife and I have already established, and so.
And that's a forever evolving thing too.
100%.
Your relationships that are close to you, family,
Friends,
spouse. Yeah, it's always evolving too, and you got to work on yourself to work on that as well, and work on the changes there, right?
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point. All the things you said, none of this is social media. So a lot of people go there thinking that's the root, right? But no, it's actually putting yourself around others and physically touch them and see them and be with them, right? And I think that's going to make more of an impact, especially long term. The more they see you, the more they get a feel for you, the more they're actually feeling your presence, that's going to stick with them longer and have a deeper impact and a truer impact that will help you in what you do. So a lot of people get carried away with, social media can get in front of this audience, but no, that might not be the right audience for you. And I think with any book of business, building your career, getting out there and actually touching others physically makes the biggest impact and the biggest difference. Even though we are in a social media world, it's not the leverage you would think.
Yeah.
It's what you're doing now and what you're speaking on now. That's the important pieces.
Yeah, and like you said, relationships. I'm not so privy to the social media world, but because I definitely want to have deeper relationships with people. Some people have great relationships through social media, but kind of going back to your whys and your principles and your values, and I want to surround myself with good people. I want to make decisions that I want to be treated how I treat others, and really just kind of, like I said, build within the community. Those are the types of things that are values to me that help those relationships. And I think we talked about it a little bit earlier about emotion, right? And so I think I usually try to turn things into things that you can measure. I would always try to be able to measure stuff, because then you can tell, is it different? Emotion is something that you can't measure. You can't measure emotion at all. And so I don't know where I was going with that, but
it's deep.
I had a point with it. I lost it. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, emotion is what moves you. Can move the needle oftentimes, though, and then it could stab you in your own back sometimes if you use too much emotion. So I think that's one thing with sales that I learned is not to get too high, not to get too low. Set those expectations kind of just right. Have the big goals there, of course.
Yeah.
But as far as expectations go, control the controllables, right? And don't let the roller coaster of outcomes decide your emotional standpoint, right? And how you're handling things mentally. Because at the end of the day, if you're day in, day out working on it and making those corrections as time goes when necessary, then things should work themselves out, and it's easy for us to slip and get away from the routines, the right habits, the right things. And maybe let that emotion of, hey, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, drive you to start doing it again, right?
Right.
So so use those feelings for that way too, you know. And sometimes you do have to speak it out loud. And I don't know if you do anything to talk out things, but I think it's really helpful when people get to put their feelings and emotions and stuff out there. I think that's helpful. We talked about mental health earlier, but not enough of us do it. And going back to the social media age, everything's displayed as perfect on there.
Yeah.
When people have the real life issues and the real life things at home that are really bothering them, and maybe not at their best at all times, but maybe they're showing it there. But like, real life is real life, man. We're all facing different challenges, different struggles behind the scenes. But it's about, you know, attacking that day by day, taking it one day at a time, and just realizing you can continue to work on yourself and improve yourself. And you've been the truth when it comes to that, man. You've been doing all these things, and you know, you'll continue to be challenged, and you've accepted that, and that's why you've chosen the path you've chosen, and realized that a lot more trials and tribulations might come with it, but you realize you can make it through it because you made it through so many things so far. And that's what I want people to see and to hear, is to know that, like, no matter where you're at in life, you can still change for the better version of yourself. You can still strive towards that. And that's just a perfect story that I think you have to show. Like, I mean, obviously on paper, if we were to look at your career chart and all the things you've accomplished, it's a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
But you've had these ups and downs along the way that you had to battle.
Yeah.
You know, and you're here.
Yeah.
You're fine. You know, and yeah, there's still tough times ahead, of course. And you might be going through one now, but like, we're here. We're gonna make the most of it. We're gonna figure it out.
Yeah. I say you deal with it every day, and you know, I do believe that, you know, you learn from failures. You learn from experience, and experience can be failures or it can be success, but you learn, like you said, like conversations that you have with people, what did I take away from that? What did I learn? And so, you know, and that those experiences help define and shape you. And, you know, I've had plenty of different experiences throughout my life that have kind of shaped who I am, and help drive the decisions that I make on a daily basis now. But yeah, it's kind of how I look back, and that's kind of how I got to where I'm at today.
And who knows? I mean, there's still opportunity for you to be doing something slightly different later, and that's okay if that happens. And you've proven that to yourself already, you know. And that's where, you know, the feeling of being stuck is what I want to help people through, because there's people that are trying to grow their business or try to do their thing that they're working on, but what it comes down to oftentimes is those other pieces of their whole life that they need to hone in on, which is like family or the stuff that's not related to career, right? Maybe mentally or physically they need to get to a certain point to push them better in life and where they want to be in their career, because they need to be better, you know, they need to be more fit in other areas maybe. And you talked about like family piece, to be there for them more. I mean, that's a perfect example when it comes to that. But that's one thing, man. I think I really appreciate you being here today. I want to be able to help you in anything moving forward. I've told you that before, and we got to figure out a way to make it happen. And I really want to be there for you. I love the fact that you want to get more involved with the community. I do as well. It's easier than we think, but it also takes a bit more work than what you think to get involved. So we'll be here sharing stories like Aaron's so people can get involved and help out in their community. Obviously, we're here in Charlotte, but I want to give people ideas elsewhere too, to think different things they can do. But there's groups and clubs and organizations, charities, foundations, nonprofits, all these different places you can reach out to. Is there some other things that you're or areas you're reaching out to, or anything that stands out that could be helpful community?
I mean, I've started getting involved in the Rotary Club in the community that I live in. You know, I feel like I'm connecting a lot with their principles and values. trying to get involved more with the Chamber of Commerce as well too. Just on the, I think I'm realizing a lot more from the Chamber of being involved, being involved in decisions of growth of like the community, like Costco's coming to Indian Land. So I think a Target's coming to Indian Land. And so kind of being on the inside, knowing some of the hows and the whys behind that, I have been enjoying being a part of all of that.
Yeah.
There's other things out there. I mean, nonprofits, Lions clubs, Kiwis clubs, things along that. There are other business networks, but I've connected a little bit more with some of the values that Rotary and Chamber are involved with. So that's kind of how I'm growing right now within the community, because I do live a little bit south of Charlotte. That is a very growing pocket.
Yeah.
And neighborhood as well too.
For sure.
So yeah, those are some of the things.
Yeah. So tell me, man, how can people connect with you if they're looking to you for advice, or to use you as a financial advisor, or they just want to pick your brain or give you a shout out? Where do they find you? How can they reach you?
Yeah. I've told you I'm not huge on social media with everything, but I mean, my social media, I believe it's Kauffman 88, Kauffman 88. I think I made a change previously from another handle, so I think that's the handle right now. But email.
But they can look you up by name too.
Yeah, they can
AARON.
Yeah, AARON KAUFFMAN. Email akauffman88@gmail.com. Happy if you want to reach out through cell 704-654-1041. Happy to really just have any conversation, because I think there's a lot of good stuff that we kind of unpacked here that if people do or are struggling, that either they're not happy or know they need to make a change, but they don't know what they want to do. Obviously, I've been through some life experiences with that, but also just give you some tidbits to think about, or things that help try to find that purpose for you and that why that we talked about.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things out there that we don't think about, that someone can just say one little tidbit and you're like, oh my gosh, that was that's exactly what I needed. So any one of those ways, happy to get a hold of me. I'm on Facebook as well too. So I'm not active on a lot of those, but happy to be in contact and help out any way possible.
Awesome. Well, I hope this gets the conversation started for you if you're looking for a career change, or looking for hope, or for any sort of change in your life, or want to understand that like there's these things that are important to me. How do I embrace more of those? And hopefully it gets that conversation started so you start making those changes that are necessary. And Aaron, thanks again, man. Like I said, I'm here for you if you ever need anything. Guys, make sure to follow, like, share, subscribe, all the things, please. Find me on all the different platforms. Look me up. But either way, I appreciate you, man, and I love this today, and you shared a lot of good insight. And thanks for being vulnerable, and thanks for sharing your story, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir.
I've been chasing all these dreams, I'm getting very close. Your work shouldn't feel like work if you really love it. If you set and you know your worth, then think if it's worth it. But I do count my blessings first, so you know I'm grateful every night. But watch me, baby, I'ma take it there. Tell ya I'ma stay the path. Tell ya I've been chasing all these dreams, I'm getting very close. Here we go.